You're listening to the ISL podcast, Insurance as a Second Language, your mobile university. Gain insight and learn to work with insurance in a new way. ISL is brought to you by NDOI, the National Directory of Insurance.
Jonathan, thank you for being with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let me just ask you, every successful salesperson has a passion, a cause that drives their success. So what is yours?
It's a great question, Lynn, and you're right. It does sort of stem from that. For me, I've always known that I am not going to be the guy that comes up with the big idea. I love entrepreneurs. I love people with passion for their business and what they do for a living. And I think I'm one of those guys that maybe I won't come up with a good idea, but I'm pretty darn good at making good ideas better. And I found that being an insurance broker and in this business, nothing can serve value to a business owner better than someone who has a broad understanding of their business and is looking out for the risks that can impact their ability to deliver on whatever they believe their destiny to be. And that's really what drives me, is to know that I can make those businesses better by participating the way I do.
So give me a little story, give me a little history about how you got into the insurance industry and what area of insurance you chose to excel in.
Oh, that absolutely. So I'll try to do the brief version. But my career actually started in marketing and advertising. I started working on an advertising campaign for Coca-Cola in the 90s. Always Coca-Cola and the Coca-Cola Polar Bears. I was on the team that created those. And if I knew that my journey would lead me to insurance at the time, I probably would have, imbibed a bit to recover from it, because it wasn't the destiny I thought I had for myself. But things sort of worked out. That led to an opportunity to get my MBA from UCLA Anderson, a top 10 business school, which broadened my understanding of business. And as I left business school, I did some consulting and marketing work for small businesses, again, back to supporting people who had a passion for their brands and their business and supporting them in marketing efforts. And one of my clients happened to be a small insurance brokerage in Sherman Oaks, California, Hoffman Brown Company. And I went to them to help them with marketing and advertising. It was something they thought they would be very interested in. And I went in-house to assist them. And in about 6 months, realized that marketing and advertising was, part of the plan. But I really had an affinity for this insurance thing. Having gotten my MBA with a lot of friends who go into consulting, afterwards, I realized that this was really a consultative job. And I fell in love with it and just wanted to learn as much as I could. And here we are 13 years later, still doing it.
So what's your area of specialty?
I focus on property and casualty. With specific niches in schools, charter schools, and independent schools, manufacturing and technology, and then some entertainment risks as well. Starting from the early career doing marketing and advertising and creating commercials, I have a soft spot for production houses and what they do.
Awesome. So share a story of your biggest or most difficult sale.
That's a great, it's a fun one. So when I switched, in about 4 years ago, I switched from Hoffman Brown to Bolton & Company, where I work now and hang my hat. And as I joined them, I was entering a new world. At Hoffman Brown, I was in a salaried environment, and Bolton was now a commissioned environment. And so I really had to rethink about how I was developing business. I tapped into a marketing background. When I was at Hoffman Brown, I had an opportunity to pursue a client that's in the liftgate business for trucks, and huge national account. And in the end, I really think they were just using us to make the current broker work a little bit harder to earn the business. I don't know if we ever had a shot at it, but the problem is I live in Los Angeles, and every day I'm stuck in traffic, and inevitably I'm stuck behind one of these liftgates. And the logo beams at me from the liftgates as though just a beacon reminding me of the one that got away. So I landed Bolton, and I realized I'm finally at a place that might have the resources to deliver the services that a client of this size and magnitude might need. But how do I reopen the door? And sure enough, I'm sitting in traffic one day, noodling on how do I get in front of these guys? It'd be great to land a big account and show Bolton why they brought me on board. And phones had just gotten cameras in them. So this is dating me a little bit, about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I took my phone, and while I'm sitting in traffic, and took a picture of the tailgate. And I emailed that picture to the office globally, 145 employees at Bolton. And in my email, I said to them, here's a logo of a client, of a prospect that I want to get in front of. For the next 2 weeks, if you happen to see this logo in your travels, safely take out your camera and take a picture of this logo and send it to me. And at the end of 2 weeks, I had about 160 photographs. The company loved it. They thought it was a fun exercise, and I got way more photographs than I needed. And I went to our marketing department and asked them to put together a poster. It was 3 feet by 2 feet. And on the poster board, foam core board, we put all 160 photographs. And the company's logo, we put in the middle, and we redoctored it so even in the logo were more pictures of this logo and the tailgates they represented across this poster board. And on the back of it, I just wrote a very simple letter. And all I said was, for the last 2 weeks, 145 employees at Bolton have been thinking about your company. Imagine what we would do if you were a client. Give me 30 minutes and I'll change the way you think about insurance and risk management. And I signed it and wrapped it up and delivered it to the office. Well, about 2 weeks went by and I hadn't heard a thing. And I started to think, wow, have I offended them in some way? I mean, who does this? I'm thinking to myself, this was brilliant. This had to be the best idea ever. And I'm about to write an email saying, hey, just following up, and the phone rings. And sure enough, it did reach the CFO. He says, it's sitting in my office. Everybody who walks by loves it. It's my brother-in-law, however, is our broker. And I just can't leave him. So while it didn't exactly have the happy ending I was looking for, I think you get a sense of the kind of effort that I'm willing to put in to pursue the big opportunity. And it's one of my favorite marketing stories to tell in pursuit of big business.
That is a great story. So what is the lesson from that you learned for going forward?
It requires a little bit of vetting prior to pursuits like that. I'd still do it again. And I think I had to be better prepared for the rejection. At that time, I think I took the thanks but no thanks too easily and, lost a window of opportunity to really sort of push for a chance to sit and talk with them. Brother-in-laws as brokers are difficult to overcome, and I can understand that. But I still wish I had been a little bit more persistent about, hey, at least you've opened the envelope and thought enough to call me. 30 minutes just to hear the story and could have been a little bit more persistent about that message, but it is what it is.
And sometimes there are opportunities to get around the brother-in-law factor. I know that I've always liked that your next in line insurance broker, because I always feel like, the really good ones are great and they have great brokers usually already. So I'm always trying to apply for the next in line insurance broker. So I think you set yourself up really well for that.
It is. It requires a little bit more diligence and just occasional pings, which I still try to do to stay in touch. And, one of the lines I use to overcome that now is, gee, when something goes wrong with your insurance, are you going to be as comfortable yelling at your brother-in-law as you would be as just to a trusted advisor? Because inevitably things do go wrong, and you have to feel comfortable as the client to be able to call out and have conversations, honest conversations. And sometimes that's a little bit harder when it's family as opposed to straight business relationships.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your thought about the size of the deals you invest in?
Well, and if you're talking about investment of time, I try to pursue. Bolton has a requirement. So at the very least, from a middle market perspective, we're looking for accounts that generate about $10,000 in commissions and above to even start talking to them. But I support the entrepreneur. I love entrepreneurs and their passion and for big ideas. So I put myself out there and try to at least assist and guide just about anybody who's got a question about insurance. But in terms of real active pursuit of business, I'm probably looking at accounts that start at about $25,000 in revenue and up. And those are the ones I spend my energy and time on.
So if you woke up tomorrow morning and your entire book of business was gone,
yep,
what would you do to rebuild it, and how long would it take you, knowing what you know now?
Sure. I think the reality is, even though I've been in the business for 13 years, the $1 Million Book really developed in about 4.5 years at Bolton. which even I'm amazed by. It's been success beyond my wildest imaginations when I joined them. I think I would be better at honing my message and focusing my efforts better than I did in the beginning. In the beginning, for sure, it was take all comers. You wanted to have a conversation with me, I'll go have a conversation with you. I think I would, you asked me in the beginning what my specialties were and my niches were. I'd spend an exorbitant amount of time on those niches only and really focus my time and energy there. I think also the 80-20 rule would become valuable too. I mean, often they say dumping 80% of your book and focusing on the 20% that generates the 80% of your revenue is probably an effective way to go about it too. So losing the entire book would just be an opportunity to hit the reset button and make sure that I focused on the accounts that that would generate that kind of revenue quickly.
So how long about do you think it would take you? Another 4.5 years?
Yeah, I think another 3-4 years. I mean, what you lose in losing a book is simply the revenue. What you don't lose is your reputation. And I think I've done as good a job as I can of staying involved in industry affairs, of broadening my network, that recovering from something like that, it's not a matter of reintroducing yourself to the marketplace as much as it is leveraging that effort that's come along in these last 15 years to recreate the opportunities. So it's not like everyone's going to forget me as well. I just simply lost the book, at least according to your question. So leveraging those relationships again would go a long way in speeding up the process.
Okay, so with that, why don't you deconstruct your business philosophy, the philosophy that you live by, your core values? Give me
Sure.
a little structure around that.
First and foremost, I've always had a promise from being a kid that I would grow old, but I wouldn't grow up. So this business is no fun to me unless I'm not having fun with it. So it's got to be fun. And yes, it has its challenges, but for the most part, I know what I'm facing. And so core philosophy is simply have fun with this. We can't take ourselves too seriously in some ways, and that's an important piece. Second, and probably even more important, is just doing the right thing every day. There are times where you've got to swallow your pride a little bit and go, I'm going to take the bullet on this one and solve the problem. That whether or not I created it, I've got to solve the problem. And so doing the right thing every day is absolutely a core value for me. And then from a business process standpoint, it really is about focusing on process. I think a lot of my colleagues spend a little bit too much time focusing on the $1 million and the success of the big deal. And don't get me wrong, the money in this industry can be great, but I don't think about it. I think about my process. Am I doing the little things every day that will move me forward and move my opportunities forward every day? And in the end, I am confident that my process, properly executed and analyzed and tweaked and improved, will deliver the results I'm hoping for. I had someone, as with any agency, we have sales competitions and we reward the highest producer in the office. And I had, back in October of last year, I had one of my colleagues ask me, how are you doing this year? And I'm honestly, I didn't know the answer. I didn't know where I stood in the rankings. I knew it was good. I knew the paycheck was growing and things were fine, but I didn't know where I stood in the rankings, and wound up finishing as the number one producer on the property casualty side in our agency for the year out of 40 producers. So,
wow,
like I said,
congratulations.
things work out.
Even top performers hit roadblocks. So how do you work through your obstacles and your failures?
Believing in the process and trying to extract where the challenges are. The example we started with the liftgate company is a perfect example of that was a roadblock. I put a lot of energy and time into making that opportunity happen. And you have to realize there's just a lot of business out there. One of my favorite things to do is take trips in and out of Los Angeles on an airplane. And when I fly back in, if I'm in a window seat, I look out at the vast urban development that is Los Angeles and go, every single one of those buildings has a need for insurance. That's the wonderful thing about our business, is that it's the common denominator across industries, across needs. Every single one needs it. And just because one didn't work out or a couple didn't work out, there's another opportunity down the road. And I try to focus on that. That's been really key in moving me forward.
So, what would you like to tell the next generation about the opportunity in insurance?
I think you have to look past the way media has built up this business to be. I often suggest that I fight a daily battle against little lizards that promise that 15 minutes will save you 15% or more, and it makes it sound like a commoditized business. And media impressions like Ned from Groundhog Day, an old 90s film where Bill Murray punches the guy in the face because he's, this annoying life insurance sales guy. And we just don't have a great reputation in the world of cocktail parties, and especially here in Los Angeles, where you've got technology and entertainment and much more sexier occupations to pursue. But if you really reframe it as I have in terms of protecting and enhancing these businesses that other people are really passionate to build, that's value, and that's an opportunity to give back to the community and be of service to others. And if you can be of service to others in that capacity, you will find a rewarding career in whatever you choose to do. I happen to think insurance does a fantastic job of giving that opportunity more than many other jobs, many other businesses.
Well, I totally agree with you. I know that the image of our industry is the number one reason that NDOI exists, because that's been a cry from our industry. Where is the 5-star experience in our industry? And I will say that agents, across the United States talk about, wishing that our image was better as an industry, and also that that we could do away with the unscrupulous in our industry. So I'm just wondering, do you experience a lot of unscrupulous competition out there?
I do, not directly. Sometimes I see some less than desirable practices in protecting accounts that I might be going after. And I know I read about it certainly plenty, just like everybody else does. Maybe I'm fortunate, or maybe I'm blind to it, because I so believe in my process and what I'm doing to be a good thing, that as long as I keep telling that story, it'll overcome the unscrupulous behavior that I see. I'm fortunate to work at a company like Bolton that has a high moral standard and really insists as we vet the people who join us. So I'm around colleagues who think the same way I do. And I think that's incredibly beneficial. I think good begets good. And we're really fortunate to be a company, a rapidly growing company. We were 140 at that time. We're almost at 180 now, only 4 years later, with offices in Northern and Southern California. And yet maintaining a culture of doing the right thing is of paramount importance. And I think that's an important element and supportive in what I'm trying to do.
So what do you think that the competition is not seeing that is perhaps being perceived as unscrupulous or unprofessional, that, agents listening to this podcast could hear and say, oh my gosh, I do that, had no idea that was being perceived as, low class or unscrupulous or unprofessional?
I would focus, if I saw it, it would be someone trying to make price the point. Price the point. We certainly have all faced those opportunities where the question comes: can you get me a lower price? And I've worked with produce industry or construction, where can you get me a lower price? And it's because that's their perspective. That's the world they live in, because they get bid out all the time for their jobs. It's not a brokered industry. And so all they know is what they go through, and that's what they ask of us. And they forget the role of the broker is to be their advocate, to deliver the low price. And where their unscrupulous behavior comes from is things like, forcing a risk on a carrier that the carrier doesn't necessarily want. Leveraging maybe the size of a book of business or your agency's book of business to say, look, you're going to take this because I need this business, rather than really thinking of what's in the best interest of the client. I have walked away from business knowing that I wasn't going to solve the problem the way the client needed to. And I think that's an important strength, to be able to say no when you know that to do what you need to do wouldn't be in the client's best interest. And as long as you can focus on that, and remember, long term, not even in the short term, because what's good on price now could be horrible a year from now for a variety of market condition reasons. It's got to be a long-term plan. And if you can do that, you can hopefully avoid some of that unscrupulous behavior. And I think also, too, back to the process versus outcome. If a broker is focused on, I just need the money on the books, you're going to make decisions that don't serve your purposes in the long term. It has to be about process. And if you believe in your process and doing the right thing for your clients, hopefully you should be able to avoid those pitfalls that drive people down poor decision making.
Well, I think that for some people, they don't really understand what a process looks like. So you talk about your process. Just really briefly, give me a quick overview of what does that mean if somebody
Sure.
to have
So
a
I guess
process.
it falls back to a marketing background and experience. To me, I am marketing Jonathan Schreter Incorporated. I happen to work for Bolton, but my job is to put my name, my expertise out there. So it's a lot of networking. It's a lot of conferences and hosting dinners and creating opportunities to engage relationships, hosting symposiums and charters that may be unrelated to insurance-related topics, but bring value to the businesses that I'm trying to serve. And that's sort of the entry. From that, being diligent about my follow-up and finding smart ways to engage with attendees and folks that I've met and bringing value to them. I try, recognizing that insurance can be a sensitive topic, I don't dive in there as a process. A lot of my process is, how do I bring value to my client or prospect? May or may not be related to risk. It may or may not be related to insurance. Some of my best days involve identifying a problem that a client's having and finding a resource for them to utilize to solve that problem. Making a connection between two people that just should know each other. And then staying engaged and involved. And eventually that leads to an opportunity to talk about insurance, and then being diligent with follow-up and oversight as to an audit or a review of their portfolio, trying to highlight the pros and cons. Don't always beat up the other guy. I think we do ourselves a disservice, again, back to the image standpoint of making the other guys look terrible. We're not all terrible. We make some mistakes, and we're going to find them, and I'm going to highlight them. But I also want to give some credit where credit's due. Oftentimes, because the client or the prospect will have said, "Well, I made that decision," and you don't know, where the decision came from. So you want to be careful of offending anybody for making certain choices based on the portfolio review, and continuing to demonstrate what I call insurance intelligence. In our business, you just have to try to be smarter than the other guy relative to the risks and products to address those risks that a prospect might need. And if you stick with that sort of overview from the 30,000 foot level down to the finite needs of the particular prospect, you really improve your chance of success.
Jonathan, you have been a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Lynn. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
You just listened to ISL, Insurance as a Second Language. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, just email us at isl@ndoi.com. That's isl@ndoi.com.